Welcome back, and thank you for downloading and listening to this episode of Hitting Your Stride. Today, I have with me Carrie Mcgregor. Carrie is the co-owner operator of the website design company called Outrageous Creations and has been since 1998. Carrie is also known to some who may follow her on Instagram as the equestrian marketing coach. Carrie has been involved in the equestrian world for over 35 years at all levels and areas of equestrian sport. Welcome to Hitting Your Stride, Carrie.
Thanks so much, Tracy, and I'm so honored to be here.
Oh, well, thank you for taking your time. I've been following you on Instagram. You are a busy woman and you're making an impact. So I'm so excited to have you here.
Great, thank you.
So I am happy to have you here, and for a couple of different reasons. So first off, being a small business owner of 3 businesses in the equestrian industry, I am fascinated by what you do with your marketing business. And secondly, I think whether the listeners are also small business owners such as myself, or individual riders trying to develop a name for themselves on social media, or somebody just trying to navigate social media, what you have to offer with your knowledge and your experience, I think, can be quite valuable. So we're definitely going to get into some social media questions near the end of this interview. But can you start us off by sharing a little bit about yourself? I believe, like most of us crazy horse girls, you started off into horses as a young girl.
I did, yeah. So I'll start with my equestrian story first. So I started riding when I was about 8 years old after bugging my parents relentlessly for riding lessons. I think they tried everything else but riding lessons because I went through figure skating and swimming and piano. And then they finally relented and let me take riding lessons. And then that, of course, led to, I think I got my first horse when I was 13 years old. And I started off in hunter jumper. I did eventing, and then I switched to just focusing on dressage. And actually, as well as competing, when I think it was my early 20s, I got involved into judging. And so for quite a few years, I used to be a dressage judge as well. And then that led me into becoming a volunteer with the Canadian Equestrian Federation, Equestrian Canada. And so I did that for a number of years. I started off with the, then it was called Dressage Canada. It's just called the Dressage Committee now. Did that and then became chair of Dressage Canada. Then that led me to being chair of Sport Council, which that was actually really fascinating because Sport Council, it doesn't exist anymore, but it was sort of a meeting place of all the disciplines. So I got to learn a bit more about vaulting, about driving, about endurance. I mean, I really enjoyed my time when I was on Sport Council. That led me to being elected to the board of directors. And then that led me actually kind of, I guess it was right before I got elected to the board of directors. That's when I was assistant team leader and then became team leader for the Canadian equestrian team. And so I've been really fortunate. Like I've just been really fortunate in being able to work in the horse industry from all different facets. When it comes to my marketing story, that's a little bit different. So I started my web design business back with my husband back in, I think it was 1998. And I was still working full time and did the business like on the side. And because of my connections with the horse industry, of course, a lot of my clients were either in the horse industry or connected to the horse industry. And so that's when I was working with a lot of them in terms of the marketing end of things. And then when I had the opportunity to do the business full time, that's when I decided to, okay, yeah, I really love doing this. I'm going to do it full time. And the past several years, it's been more social media, right? I've been getting more into social media. So in particular, Facebook and Instagram. Right. Those are the 2 platforms where I would say the majority of the equestrian industry is hanging out on. So that's kind of like a very quick, fast snapshot of my involvement.
That is definitely a snapshot in what I'm guessing is a very jam-packed. I think that's amazing that, your story of how you went through from different committees to board of directors and everything else. You're obviously very community minded and love to be involved in the sport no matter what level. And I love the fact that you'd love to learn about so many others than the one that you had found yourself sort of niched into. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely been like a privilege, and I think it just gives you a much more well-rounded view of the horse industry as a whole, because I think it's so easy for us to get stuck in the one thing that we either ride ourselves or compete ourselves or do
Yeah.
ourselves. And I think that when you can broaden your horizons a bit and see all the different other ways that people are riding their horses, like reining. Reining blew my mind the first time that I saw it live. It was at the 2010 World Equestrian Games in Kentucky. And yeah, I knew about reining, but to actually see it live, that just blew my mind. And
Wow.
vaulting as well. Vaulting completely blew my mind as well, because
Right.
it's gymnastics, but on a moving horse.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Yeah. Talk about partnership.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
So is this road, as an equestrian marketing professional, is this road what you pictured for yourself when you first got into horses?
Definitely not. Definitely not. And I'm going to be severely dating myself right now. But when I first got into horses as a kid, websites, I mean, not even did social media not exist, websites did not exist.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm grateful in a way as a kid that social media didn't exist, but I also kind of wish that it did, because I didn't have a phone that I could take like all these, cool photos and videos and stuff with my horse. I totally
True.
would have
Yeah.
at that age. Um, but yeah, so at first I thought I was going to be a vet, which I think a lot of horse crazy kids probably, yeah, you did too.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to be a vet, but all that blood and gory stuff.
Yes.
So
And
I quickly realized, yeah, that's not going to be a path for me being a vet. And then I was convinced that I was going to be a journalist. And I even took 1 year of journalism in my first year of university. And I've always been creative and I've always loved writing. So digital marketing, when it started to become a thing, digital marketing was definitely the perfect fit for me.
interesting. Yeah. So you've got this natural curiosity, shall we say, to learn more about people and involve yourself in different aspects of the industry.
And I love learning new things. Love it. I
Nice.
mean, it's funny because, there's that saying that you don't, this is going to make me sound like a really old person, but how youth is wasted on the young.
Yes.
Learning in a way is wasted on the young, because when I was in school and when I was in university, all I could think of was getting to the barn, right? I just wanted to like have the classes done so I could get to the barn. Couldn't wait to the weekend for the horse shows. I remember being like in high school, and when the prize list would come out for the season, and I would have it open on my desk at school and going through and deciding, oh, I want to go to this show and these classes. And so everything was centered around horses. But I love learning, and
Yeah.
I'd give anything if I could just learn full time now. I
Yeah.
had that back then, but yeah, I love learning.
Well, isn't the journey that you're on now kind of like a constant learning curve, learning how to deal with different people, different businesses, different aspects of new innovative ways of dealing with social media?
For sure. And I mean, social media is a moving target. It's
Yeah.
constantly a moving target. I mean, even if you just pick one platform, so Instagram, right? So Instagram is my jam. I love Instagram. But even just this past week, there have been like new updates that have come out. Like it's
Okay.
constantly evolving, and how people are using it is evolving too. So that also actually, you bring up a good point. That fits with my personality really well too, because
Yep.
you never stop learning. Much like with horses, right? You never
Yep.
stop learning.
Well, and I found like after so long, 23 years of massaging horses, I go into every new client, every horse, open to learning. You have to, or else you won't go much farther in with your vocation or with your passion, however you look at it. And with the life coaching, that was a huge thing for me too. That was kind of like diving right into something I felt I was naturally drawn to. So I was very excited about it. But yeah, whole different aspect, a different element of me, sort of bringing that out, and again, loving the learning process of doing coaching. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And I think it also it helps you help people better, right? I think
Yeah.
that the best I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but um, I don't want to say the best people, but the best instructors, for instance, are those who are always learning. The best
Yeah.
teachers are the ones who are always learning.
Yep. I totally agree. So what was the tipping point in following your passion to helping equestrian businesses succeed? Like, what was it that made you go, this is what I really want to do?
I think, well, I mean, I had dreams like probably a lot of people when they start riding at a young age. I had dreams that I was going to go to the Olympics, right?
Yep.
I mean, I was like super competitive. I was in full-time training. My horse was in full-time training. I actually moved, 4 hours from home to be with my trainer once university ended so I could, continue training. And when I realized that I wasn't going to be achieving the dream of going to the Olympics, I wanted to do what I could to still be involved and still be contributing to the success of others in the industry. And,
Nice.
I thought of this quote actually for our chat today, and it's from Seth Godin, who's like, Mr. Marketing Guru out there. And he said, instead of wondering when your next vacation is, maybe you should set up a life you don't need to escape from.
Ooh, Carrie, that just gave me
I
goosebumps.
know. That's like pretty powerful.
Wow.
And I thought, I can really relate to that because I used to work for the Royal Bank's tech department in a cubicle,
Wow.
and that wasn't for me.
Nope.
And then I worked in the marketing department for a tech company during the whole dot-com boom. And that was a little closer because I enjoyed the marketing aspect,
Yeah.
but it still wasn't for me. And so when that company folded with the big dot-com bubble burst, I thought, okay, I've been doing, the company with the website design company business on the side with my husband. I'm going to take the plunge now to do that full time. And then that's when I also leaned into the context I had already in the equestrian industry to help me just really build that up. And it just made sense.
Wow. So everything just kind of fits and it just kind of happens naturally, right? I find some of the best things, like, sure, I don't want to use the word forcing it, but yeah, like you can go after something and you can make it happen and you're like, yes, I've got this. And then other times it just kind of naturally flows and things present themselves to you. So it kind of sounds like your story was a bit like that.
Yeah. And it's definitely a trade-off too. I mean, you probably know this yourself, like working for Royal Bank was great in the sense of regular paycheck and stability and benefits, but it also meant 9 to 5, super rigid, you're like locked in. And working for yourself, you have more freedom. There's a lot more unpredictability that happens.
Yep.
You kind of have 20 bosses instead of one in a way, right? Depending on how big your client roster is.
Yep.
But at the same time, it gives you way more freedom. Like I would never have been able to do all the stuff that I did volunteering wise and with the major games if I was working at the bank.
Yeah, that's true.
There's just no way. So
Yeah.
there's kind of like that trade-off, right?
Yeah.
And if that trade-off works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it definitely is. And there are times, and I think that's why is one of the things too reasons why I wanted to have you come on, because yes, you're self-employed. Yes, you have, your expertise is in something that is so at top, everybody's looking at getting into and to try to better themselves, especially as equestrian businesses. And yeah, I just think it's so important for people to, I don't know, to understand a little bit of like not only what's behind it, but what kind of drives them to take part on social media. So it's just like, yeah, the whole businesses, and that's part of what I've really wanted this podcast to do, right? Is to not only talk to the riders, but also talk to the equestrian businesses out there, and whether that is riders, like I said in the intro, you've got sorry, like a professional rider trying to get their face more out there on social media and get sort of like an influence type of position. Do you find people looking for that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that uh, I think it's better than what it used to be, but it could still be a lot better than what it is. I think that a lot of athletes, they need to view themselves as a business. Like if
Mm,
they're doing this full time, they're a business and they're a brand.
yeah.
And because I mean, you can just see the Olympics going on right now, right? So there's always favorite riders. People always have their favorite riders that they're cheering for. Why is it their favorite rider?
Mm-hmm.
It's the brand, right? It's how that person, maybe it's how they ride their horse, maybe it's how, they've seen them in interviews, or it could be a million different things, and they just really connect with that rider. And I think not enough riders view themselves as a business and a brand.
Yeah.
But I think that's changing. I think that um, riders are getting better at that, and it doesn't even have to be riders at the international level. It can be riders who, they're a big name in your community, in your local area, right? They're the go-to trainer for X, Y, and Z, and they also need to view themselves as a business and a brand. And it could be in terms of the clinics they give, or the students that they're coaching, or maybe they also buy and sell horses
Mm-hmm.
as well. So I think that is starting to become more apparent. I mean, a really good example actually is Charlotte Desjardins, right? So
Right.
she exploded onto the scene in 2012 at the London Olympics. I mean, nobody knew who she was, right? Until she competed on the team. She came out of nowhere. She won a gold medal. And then almost immediately, what did she do? She had a PR firm
Mm.
that helped her with everything. And they took care of everything for her. They took care of her website. They took care of her social media. They took care of all that, because you can imagine the kind of media contacts that happened, right? That
Oh
people
yeah.
were asking her to, oh, well, can you represent my saddle or my clothing line or my, whatever. They want interviews with her. And that's kind of like an extreme example. However, she's very careful with her brand
Yeah.
and everything to do with her brand. And so I think that more and more riders and trainers and businesses are starting to be aware of that.
Yep. You have to in this day and age. Yeah. So going back to the riders and you having personal experience with these riders, I was so excited for this conversation because I want to hear all about the fact that you were chef de mission for the Canadian equestrian team.
Yeah.
Yes, please share that story with us. That is so cool.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for asking. So, and I said team leader earlier. It's because in equestrian, those two terms are kind of interchangeable. Chef de mission, team leader. It depends, like the games that you're at. If
Okay.
you're at a World Equestrian Games, it's typically chef de mission that's used. And when you're at a Pan American Games or an Olympic Games, because you're part of like the bigger Olympic body, then
Mm-hmm.
that gets switched to team leader. But without a doubt, that that is one of the most privileged opportunities that I've had.
Wow.
I've been an Olympic junkie since I was a kid, like always glued to TV whenever the Olympics are on. That's these Olympics notwithstanding, these are included.
Yep.
And to be able to play like a small role in helping these truly amazing, incredible athletes, their owners, their grooms, their support teams, their family and friends, like that is just such an honor, and it was such an incredible privilege. And it's truly mind-boggling, all the work that goes into getting the horses and riders and the support teams to these major games. I mean, I knew that, obviously must be a lot of work. I had no idea until, I got the opportunity first as an assistant chef de mission, seeing everything that's involved, especially with Pan American Games and Olympic Games, because you're dealing with a lot of additional security
Mm-hmm.
restrictions. And you're also dealing with different organizing bodies who they're not that familiar with horses. At least with the World Equestrian Games, okay, that's the FEI, they know horses.
Right.
But with the Pan American Games and Olympics, they don't.
Okay.
Or even when you're dealing with your own National Olympic Committee, so in Canada, that's the Canadian Olympic Committee, they don't. And so it's a lot of education that you have to do, and it's a lot of challenges that can happen.
So
Um,
how many years did this span that you were doing this?
so the first games that I took part in as assistant team leader were the 2007 Pan American Games that were in Rio de Janeiro.
Okay.
And then the year after that was 2008, and those were the Beijing Olympics, although the equestrian portion took place in Hong Kong, which was kind of, I mean, they were stunning Olympics. It was kind of sad in a way because equestrian was completely removed from Beijing, right? Being in Hong Kong. And so I was assistant team leader then. And then that's when the baton got handed to me when Mike Gallagher, who is the chef de mission / team leader at the time, he handed the baton to me for the 2010 World Equestrian Games in Kentucky.
Wow.
And then that followed with the 2012 Olympics in London and the 2000 where am I going now? 2010 Kentucky, 2011 Pan American Games in Guadalajara, Mexico, 2012 Olympics in London, and the 2014 World Equestrian Games in France. I
Wow.
think I got it.
Jeez.
Yeah. So those were the games I was able to take part in.
That's amazing, and that would be such an honor. And my goodness, your organization skills must be absolutely amazing. So like even in trying to process that, as far as like learning from that in this podcast, you taking on that job, you obviously have certain characteristics that that you could handle that. What were they? Like when Mike handed you that baton, you said, all right, Carrie, what am I bringing to the table?
Well, I'll first say that he was an incredible person to be shadowing. So that's number one. And what I learned, and it's funny because I constantly struggle with imposter syndrome, constantly. Like I never think that I'm good enough. Even when I was asked to take on the role of the assistant chef de mission, I thought, what, you're asking me? and then when I accepted, I kept thinking they must have made a mistake. They must have why would they must have made a mistake. And it's funny how we have a hard time like believing what other people see in us, right?
Yep.
So I think that the qualities that people saw, and this is going to feel really weird for me to say this because I feel like I'm bragging, but I think the qualities were highly organized,
Mm-hmm.
being able to manage people, and different personality types. Because in the horse world, if you just look at the microcosm of the horse world, eventers are very different from dressage people, are very different from show jumpers, are completely different from the endurance riders. They are all so very different in their personalities. And being able to manage that, I think, takes skills. And also being able to be cool under pressure, because things will go wrong,
Yep.
definitely. And you will deal with difficult people. And I'm not talking about the riders necessarily, but just the organizers, or different people who are involved at the different levels within the organizing committee. And you have to figure out a way to just be calm, be cool, and also know that everything that you're doing is to protect the athlete's performance bubble. Like the biggest compliment, and it was a little frustrating, I might say, but when I looked at it from this perspective, when people would think that, oh, but it must be so great because you get to go to these games and you get to watch all these, riders compete firsthand. And it's like, yeah, the amount of actual competition I got to see was pretty small. Like if I wanted to see
Yeah.
everybody compete, I'm far better like watching it on TV and
Right.
not going, because there's always things going on, right? And I thought, I'll take that as a compliment, because I want it to be so that the riders and their support teams feel like I'm not doing anything in a way, like if that makes sense, because
Yeah.
everything's going smoothly for them.
Yeah.
Or if something happens, it gets solved.
Yeah.
And I think
Wow.
that is one of the best skills that a chef to keep, whether it's a chef to keep for the show jumping team or a team leader can do, is they're protecting the athlete's performance bubble.
Yeah. Well, thank you for, for touching on your vulnerability with that aspect of not wanting to, sorry, kitten coming through, not saying the imposter syndrome, but you know what, I'm a big believer that at some point in time we should be able to, we need to say what we're good at, we need to be able to share that and sort of reinforce those qualities, because obviously you are quite talented or else you would not be in that position, right? So good for you. And yeah, I think it's funny too, because you're just going about doing your job, but people notice these things, and it's okay to pat yourself on the back and say, you know what, I'm pretty darn good at organizing stuff.
It's hard to pat yourself on the back.
I
I'll
know.
say that. I read a comic the other day, and it was talking all about how it's like it's easy to give a compliment, but it's hard to receive a
Yes.
compliment. And
Yeah.
I am totally that person where somebody compliments me, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with it, and then I just end up making excuses, saying, "Oh yeah, that was no problem. It was really like I'll minimize everything, right? Because
Right.
I can't deal with
Yeah.
being given a compliment."
No, maybe that's something that we can say, you and I can work on a daily basis. We can encourage listeners to go, you know what, when people give us compliments, we just say thank you, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep, you make it
So
sound so simple.
yeah, exactly. So I love this next question. Because based especially too on how we've moved along in this conversation, do you still consider yourself the chef de mission for equestrians in Canada? Because you said your mission is to see the equestrian industry thrive.
You know, that is like, I never thought of it that way. I never ever thought of it that way. And I think that's
Cool.
because, again, like the imposter syndrome, right?
Yep.
But I truly do want to see the industry thrive. I mean, horses have brought so much to my own life, and I know that they do in the lives of others. And I mean, how crazy is it that it's a sport, no matter what discipline that you're into, but how crazy is it that it's a sport where there's no age limit?
Right.
Like gymnastics, right? There's no age limit.
Yep.
I mean, Andrew Hoy, the eventer from Australia, who just won 2 medals, team medal and individual medal, 62. 62
Whoa.
eventing in
Wow.
his 8th Olympics.
Wow.
Like there's no age limit. And
Yeah,
also where men and women can compete on equal terms.
exactly. Yeah, I was going to
I
say
mean, there
that.
are just so many awesome things. Plus, the way that you can stay involved and be active in the industry, not just competitively, but recreationally,
Yeah.
right? Like with trail riding.
Yeah. And I think too, like with your equestrian marketing business, it's like you're taking that passion that you have to see the industry thrive, and you're just redirecting it in a different way that I think is really necessary at this time.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. I mean, that's my goal. That's definitely my goal.
Awesome. And I love the word thrive when you use that. Because there's a difference. I mean, sometimes the journey, sometimes the battle that you're in the moment on that day can kind of feel like a survival more than a thrive. So I love that you use that word. There's definitely a difference between, you know, dealing with the day-to-day, you know, constant same activities and stuff. And it's like, okay, how can we help this industry thrive? How can we get sort of that fire ignited underneath people and get them inspired, and, you know, see different avenues and different ways to help build their business, build their personal selves, community minded. I love that part.
Yeah. No, I really believe in that. And also too, I think that sometimes, particularly for business owners, it can be kind of lonely, right?
Yes.
And so anything that can sort of help connect people and make them realize that, you know, we're all going through some struggles, right? I mean, it might look like we have it all together, but we don't always have it all together. And I think building that kind of community, I mean, we talked earlier on about collaboration
Yeah.
versus competition, right? And it's, you know, having that collaboration feeling, I think can make a huge, huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is your opinion of the industry, and where do you want to see it go? Where do you think it's at right now?
That's a really loaded question. That's, that would be like for like an entire evening or something over drinks and like getting into it. Um, I think that unfortunately, I think we'll always be wrestling with the image that horses are for the rich.
Mm,
And in terms of sport specifically, that it's horses who do all the work. And it's funny because I got into a debate last week with somebody on Twitter, which I never like get into debates on social media because it, you know, usually never ends well, right? But I couldn't help it because he had posted about how, you know, he doesn't understand why equestrian, it's the thing that we always hear, why is equestrian in the Olympics when it's a horse that does all the work? But I was kind of happy that I got into this debate with this person because after a few exchanges back and forth, the person actually started to understand
mm,
that while the horse definitely needs to be a finely tuned athlete, so does the rider. And I think it was just because if you're not, you know, exposed at all to horses and you just see it on TV, then I think naturally you think, well, it's the horse that does all the work.
yeah.
So I think generally speaking, the equestrian industry is still lagging behind other sports in terms of marketing and media and in terms of telling the story.
Right.
I it's getting better, but there's still, I think, a lot of ground to cover on that.
Okay. And do you foresee you, I mean, with your background, you already know so much about it. You've been in the trenches, you've helped these riders in those competitive moments. Do you foresee this, your equestrian marketing business, really taking the lead on where you want to see the industry go?
Yeah, I mean, I would I would love to. I mean, again, my imposter syndrome is coming in, right? When you're saying about taking the lead and being at the forefront and trailblazing, and
Woohoo.
I guess my my view is, see, I need to hire you as like my person or something, right? I think that, you know, I want to do my part to help shine a light that marketing needs to be more than just an afterthought with um, businesses and athletes in the equestrian industry. And I
Mm,
know that they're so busy like running the day-to-day things
yes.
that it's like pushed to the side or it's done kind of hit and miss. But I would like to do what I can to make it easier for them and to sort of show that it can be done without the rest of your business or life suffering as a result or
Right.
having to make a compromise.
No, I love it. I'm very excited about what you are going to be doing. I can just see it now. And like I said, I've been following you on Instagram for a while now, and what you put out there is very engaging. It's inspiring because you put your vulnerability out there. You know, the whole imposter syndrome, and like you said, we all suffer from it. um I think that's one of my goals, is just to be like, look, this is just who I am, this is what we do, that, you know, we're all learning from each other. But yes, I'm very excited to see where you go with this, because I think your background and your insight to the industry is going to guarantee you success. I
Well,
really do. Yeah.
much.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so do you think, okay, so now that we're on the topic of social media, do you think people make social media harder than it needs to be?
For sure. For sure, for sure. And that includes me. I mean, even until today. Especially if you're an overthinker, because as well as suffering from imposter syndrome, I'm also an overthinker and I'm also a perfectionist, which
Yeah,
I think a lot of people in the horse industry are,
yeah.
right? And I think that can make, along with some other things, I think that can make social media sometimes intimidating
Mm-hmm.
for some people. And they may be consumers of social media, so they might, be using social media just to follow other people or to keep in touch, or to keep up on news, but they're unsure of how to effectively use it to promote themselves.
Yeah,
And so they either avoid it or they're a bit sporadic with it. So they're kind of posting things haphazardly. They don't really have a plan or a strategy, or they might post, 3 times 1 week and then they're not there for 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And then they come back to it. And so it's like really kind of hit and miss. And I also think too that many people make the mistake of thinking that they have to be on all the platforms. I
right.
mean, they know that there's Facebook and there's Instagram and there's LinkedIn and there's Twitter and there's TikTok now and Snapchat and I think it's just like it gets overwhelming. And I think when you get overwhelmed, you just kind of get paralyzed and you end up not really doing anything. And like I said earlier on, I think that when it comes to the equestrian industry, the two platforms that you should be active on is Facebook and Instagram. If you just focus on those two, you can, forget about the rest. If you have the bandwidth to add in TikTok, great, but don't feel like you have to be on TikTok. Just focus on Facebook and Instagram, and anything else is a bonus.
Yeah. Yeah, like, you know, and as I said earlier, is like, being an owner of three businesses, yeah, I gotta tell you, that's really hard. I do what I can,
Yeah, I
and
don't know how you manage that.
my husband and I, with our Stone Path business, you know, we sort of do that mutually and stuff. But you know, with the coaching business, I got to tell you, I mean, if anybody follows me on Instagram or Facebook, you know, I think I'm doing a pretty good job. I definitely know that, I mean, I should hire you because I feel like, yes, there is more of a bigger picture that I want to present, and it is a lot of work to think about your content and the quality of your content, letting people know who you are, not just about what you do too, right? Because that's where the real connection comes from.
It's all about what you can do for them, right? So, I mean, one of the sort of pillars with any marketing is being able to convey that message of what you can do for them, what you can help them achieve, versus talking about yourself
Right.
and how great you are and all your credentials and your many years, of experience. So that's talking too much about you. It's what can you help them achieve? What's the end result that they can get by working with you or
Mhm.
using your product? And if you flip it that way, then that's when you can resonate way more and
Right.
attract more of an audience.
Yeah. I think when I said them get to know you, because unless people feel connected to you, they're not going to reach out to you. Am I correct? Am I correct?
Yeah,
Like
that's true.
there's got to
Yeah.
be some sort of a melding between personalities a little bit.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Because the more that you can insert your personality or your values,
Yeah.
then that also helps to distinguish you from the other person who might be doing either exactly the same thing as you or something similar.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You have to make yourself stand out somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what basic principles can people apply to make social media easier or less intimidating? And I think the intimidating is the big part for a lot of people. But what kind of basic principles can you sort of share with us right now on those two aspects?
Yeah, sure. So, okay, so I would say number one, what I said before, just focus on one or two platforms. And so I highly recommend for the equestrian industry, that's Facebook and Instagram.
Okay.
So just limit what you're going to do, because if you spread yourself too thin, you're going to stress yourself out and you probably will do a mediocre job on all of them, right? So get really focused on what the platforms are that you're going to show up on. And I think another thing too is understand that you don't need to post every day. And I think a lot of people get swept up in, oh, I got to post every day, and I'm just thinking about it is overwhelming me and stressing me out, and that, like I said, it kind of paralyzes them, and they don't do anything. You don't need to post every day. So I like to I like to recommend, if you can do 3 times a week and be consistent at 3 times a week, that's fantastic. So that's number two.
Okay.
Number three, I would say that it's important to find at least a couple of people who are reputable experts that you can follow for online tips and advice. And Instagram and YouTube are great places to find these people. And I would kind of like vet them out a little bit too, right? Because there are, just like, there's plenty of trainers out there. There's
Mm-hmm.
plenty of social media, experts or gurus, but they're not all created equal, right? So you want to make sure that you find one that, like what you said, their personality resonates with you. So you
Yep.
enjoy listening to them and how they teach and their style and their vibe. But also what they're saying, makes sense. And they have sort of the proof to back it up, and it's ethical what they're telling you to do. Like, they're not telling you to buy followers or
Right.
any of that kind of crazy stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, find one or two people, and if they have a mailing list, and most of them do, sign up for their mailing list, so that way you're kind of getting, being kept up to date on what's happening, or some ideas on engagement or post ideas. And I think that will just help you along your journey.
Yeah. That way it sort of acts like you're getting some coaching.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't feel so alone too. Because a lot of people too, like for myself, if I speak about myself, like I'm building a community, right? So I have a private Facebook group where people can ask questions, and they can feel free to ask questions, or
Hmm.
they could, send me a direct message directly if they didn't want to, ask in the group. And I think that just kind of helps provide that extra level of support. Or if you don't know where to go, you're struggling with something, you don't know where to go to get the answer. So I think that that can help a lot. And I would also say that if you don't have the time, because some business owners or some riders, they just don't have the time to post, don't be afraid to have someone help you. Just
Mm-hmm.
make sure that it's someone that you trust and who understands your values and your voice.
And your vision.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And then they can help you create the content so that you can be consistent with that. But it's just really important that it's somebody that you trust, because this is your brand that you're
Right.
asking them to manage, right? And so you
Wow.
want to make sure that um, they don't do something that is completely against what your brand is or what your values are.
Right. You see a post and you're like, wait, that's that's on my
Yeah,
page and that doesn't look like me or sound like me.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And then the last thing I would say is to don't underestimate the value in creating and scheduling posts in advance. it can save you a ton of time.
Isn't
And
that called batching?
yes,
Okay.
yes, it is. And it doesn't have to be batching like you're batching one for every day. It could be you're batching two,
Right.
two, two a week for the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I mean,
Yeah.
however long you want to batch for. And it doesn't mean that you can't also show up. Sorry, it doesn't mean that you can't also show up on the fly and post
Mhm.
something. But at least when you know that you've already got stuff that's going to be scheduled coming out, you're not feeling that, pressure.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say that constant pressure of, oh my goodness, I've got to do a post. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I've been on the ball enough a few times to go, okay, let's arrange two to be posted at certain times on certain days, and it really is a huge relief.
Yep. And actually, and it works really well too. If you do have somebody that can help you, they can schedule things, but then you can just quickly, like if you use Facebook Creator Studio, for instance, which is completely free, you can quickly go in and see what they have scheduled just to make sure that, yep, that looks all good, or you just
Hmm,
want to change some wording or something.
okay, interesting.
Mhm.
Well, I got to tell you, this has been so much fun, and it has been an area of an interview for one of my episodes that is something new. I have not talked to anybody like you before, and I think you are
I'm the first one. I feel so special.
you are, and I think you're such an important cog in the wheel for everybody. And like I said in the intro, for even people who aren't business owners or aren't individuals trying to promote their brand, they're just your everyday people just checking stuff out on social media. What can they get from, like, they don't necessarily have a connection with you, do they? Or is there a way, I guess you're trying to connect with them though, right? With the posts?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so I'm just trying to understand your question. So,
So yeah, like your marketing business, you're looking to reach out to people like myself who owns businesses, or to riders who are trying to promote their brand. So the everyday user of Instagram or Facebook or any other social media platform, they like, you are trying to promote and produce messages to them, right? So as a marketing individual, you're not just trying to draw in people like me, but you are trying to reach out to those everyday users, correct?
yeah, I mean, I would say that, I mean, definitely what I do is specifically to catch the eye and help and engage with those who have something to market, whether it's themselves or a product or a service. Um, but in doing so, it's to also help give them tips on how they can connect with the everyday person who
Right.
is engaging with them. So it's sort of like an indirect way, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, in a way. Like I want to make it easier for them to be able to connect to the everyday person who is their dream client or their dream
Right.
customer.
But you need to know what those everyday consumers want.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a sandwiched, multi-layered
It is.
aspect, but
It's
yeah,
really
I mean, and it just
understanding.
fascinates me.
Yeah. Well, it's like it's like kind of the crux of marketing, right? Like
Hmm.
any great marketing agency, it's being able to understand the psychology of the everyday person so that they can help their clients sell to that person or
Wow.
attract that person, right?
Yeah. Very cool. See, no wonder
Very meta here.
there you go. And it's all your great people skills that help to figure that aspect out for you too, right? You're a good people reader.
I try to be. Yeah, I
Yeah.
try to be.
Awesome. Well, Carrie, thank you so much for doing this. I've been very excited about this conversation and getting to know you. Obviously, I will put all of your contact information or whatever you want me to share up on the show notes. But for the listeners right now, where can people find you?
Yeah, okay. So, well, you can definitely find me on Instagram.
There we go.
My handle is at Equestrian Marketing Coach, and you can find me on there. You can also find my equestrian marketing website, which is equestrianmarketingcoach.com. And speaking of ideas and content ideas, I'm just going to give this little plug here. I have a 180 days of content ideas calendar that I just created. It's specifically geared for equestrians. The link is in my bio. If you go to my Instagram profile, you'll see the link in my bio. And it's to help, what we talked about before, is to help people save time, be consistent, and avoid that dreaded, what do I post today feeling that we all come up against. So you can find all the details there in the link in my bio.
That sounds amazing. I know I'm going to check it out.
And my DMs are always open too. So I'm always happy
Awesome.
when I get a DM from somebody asking a question.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, I'm going to continue to follow you and soak up all of your wonderful ideas and experience.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this. This is fun.